Imagine a world where a woman's voice could actually be stolen by a sea witch, stored in a seashell, and then used as a bargaining chip. In reality, human vocal patterns are neural impulses and physical vibrations, not magical essences that can be extracted. Or consider a wooden puppet transforming into a real boy. Cellular differentiation, organ development, and neural complexity appearing spontaneously from carved pine. What about a young woman falling into a century-long sleep after pricking her finger, only to be awakened by a kiss? Medically, this would represent the longest documented case of coma with full recovery, defying everything we know about brain atrophy and muscle wasting. For generations, Disney films have shaped our understanding of everything from animal behavior to physics, often at odds with scientific reality. The comfortable narratives we cherish from childhood sit in stark contrast to the natural laws that govern our universe. What happens when we remove the veil of magic and examine these beloved tales through the unforgiving lens of scientific accuracy? The answer is both disturbing and fascinating. A collision between childhood wonder and adult understanding that forever changes how we view these cultural touchstones. The tradition of fairy tales predates Disney by centuries, originating as dark moral lessons often designed to frighten children into good behavior. When Walt Disney began adapting these stories in the 1930s, he deliberately softened their edges, creating a template for family entertainment that has endured for nearly a century. Dr. Hannah Prescott, professor of comparative media studies at MIT, explains, Disney created a distinct visual and narrative language that prioritizes emotional resonance over factual accuracy. This was never hidden, it was the explicit purpose. Disney's anthropomorphization of animals began with Mickey Mouse in 1928 and evolved into a cornerstone of the studio's approach. Animals in Disney films speak, reason, wear clothes, sing, and exhibit human emotional complexity, attributes that scientific observation tells us are uniquely human or, at minimum, greatly exaggerated versions of animal cognition. Dr. Oliver Vance, zoologist at the San Diego Zoo Wildlife Alliance, notes, the attribution of human characteristics to animals is called anthropomorphism, and while it helps create emotional connection in storytelling, it fundamentally misrepresents animal biology and behavior. We now know this affects how children understand and interact with the natural world. This anthropomorphism extends beyond mere personality. Disney animals frequently defy physical laws, lions producing symphonic roars without the proper vocal anatomy, mice wielding objects several times their body weight, and marine creatures spending extended periods out of water without respiratory distress. But the scientific inaccuracies in Disney films go far beyond talking animals. The physics-defying feats of characters, impossible biological transformations, and magical interactions with the natural world all create a version of reality that diverges dramatically from scientific understanding. Professor Malcolm Turner, biologist at Stanford University, frames the question this way: what would Disney stories look like if they followed the actual laws of nature? The answer is they would be unrecognizable, and in many cases, deeply disturbing. This raises an intriguing question. What happens when we systematically strip away the magic and apply scientific principles to these beloved stories? Let us begin our scientific journey underwater. In 1989, Disney released The Little Mermaid, featuring Ariel, a humanoid with a fishtail who breathes underwater yet can also survive in air. Biologically, this presents immediate problems. Dr. Elena Morales, marine biologist at Scripps Institution of Oceanography, explains, vertebrate species are either adapted for aquatic or terrestrial life. The physiological demands are fundamentally incompatible. A creature with human lungs would drown underwater, while fish gills collapse and cease functioning in air. The mermaid anatomy itself presents insurmountable biological challenges. The human torso requires a complex skeletal structure including a pelvis, which would be incompatible with the lateral undulation movement of a fishtail. The muscular systems are entirely different, with humans using antagonistic muscle pairs while fish employ myomeres, segmented muscle blocks. The circulatory systems present another problem, adds Dr. Morales. Fish have two-chambered hearts designed for their specific respiratory needs, while humans have four-chambered hearts. These systems cannot be simply merged at the waist. Then there is the issue of temperature regulation. Fish are ectothermic or cold-blooded, meaning they rely on environmental temperature, while humans are endothermic and maintain constant internal temperature. A hybrid organism would face severe thermoregulatory challenges, likely resulting in hypothermia in the human portion or hyperthermia in the fish portion. Sebastian the crab presents his own set of biological impossibilities. Crustaceans do not have vocal cords or the respiratory apparatus needed to speak. Their nervous systems are also rudimentary compared to vertebrates, with approximately 100,000 neurons compared to a human's 86 billion. A crab conducting an orchestra is about as plausible as a human breathing underwater, notes Dr. Morales. Crustacean appendages evolved for marine locomotion and feeding, not manipulating complex objects like batons. The famous Kiss the Girl scene, where diverse marine species coordinate to create romantic ambience, defies fundamental animal behavior. Species that are natural predators and prey appear in close proximity without predatory responses. Fish swim in choreographed patterns contradicting their natural schooling behaviors, which evolved as protection from predators. Most troubling is Ursula's ability to extract and store Ariel's voice. Human speech requires the coordinated action of lungs, vocal cords, tongue, and mouth, a complex neurological and physiological process, not a discrete physical object that can be removed while leaving other functions intact. If someone could actually remove your voice, explains Dr. Howard Fletcher, neurologist at Johns Hopkins University, it would likely involve severing the connection between the brain and vocal apparatus, resulting in far more extensive damage than mere silence. The victim would likely experience paralysis of throat muscles, affecting swallowing and possibly breathing. Disney's 1998 film A Bug's Life demonstrates a common problem in cinematic entomology, the creation of insects with facial features and expressions impossible in arthropod anatomy. Entomologist Dr. Philip Ramos from the University of California, Davis explains, insects do not have facial muscles for expression. Their exoskeletons prevent the kind of malleable features needed for smiles or frowns. Additionally, their compound eyes cannot move or express emotion. They are fixed sensory organs designed to detect movement, not convey feeling. The film's protagonist, Flick, is an ant with clearly visible ears, organs ants do not possess. Real ants detect vibrations through their legs and antennae, using completely different sensory mechanisms than mammals. The proportions are also wildly inaccurate, continues Dr. Ramos. If rendered accurately, the characters would be nearly unrecognizable to audiences. A realistic ant head would appear alien, with mandibles, antennae, and compound eyes arranged in ways that human brains would struggle to anthropomorphize. The social structure of the ant colony in the film bears only superficial resemblance to actual ant behavior. While the film correctly shows a female queen, it incorrectly portrays the colony's decision-making as hierarchical rather than emergent. Real ant colonies operate through complex chemical signaling and distributed intelligence without centralized authority. Perhaps most glaring is the film's villain, a grasshopper leading other grasshoppers to extort food from ants, notes Dr. Ramos. In nature, grasshoppers are herbivores with no interest in the protein-rich diet ants collect. Different insect orders rarely interact in the coordinated ways shown in the film, and certainly not in mafia-like protection schemes. The circus bugs in the film represent another layer of biological impossibility. A praying mantis serving as a fortune-teller contradicts the species' predatory nature. Mantises are ambush predators with limited cognitive capacity for tasks beyond hunting. The ladybug character, portrayed as male and sensitive about being mistaken for female, ignores the biological reality that ladybugs can be either gender, with no obvious external differences visible to human observers. The Black Widow spider character illustrates another common misconception, Dr. Ramos points out. While female black widows can indeed be dangerous to mates, the film's portrayal of a serial husband killer exaggerates this behavior beyond recognition. In nature, sexual cannibalism in black widows is situational, not universal, and certainly not premeditated in any cognitive sense. The Lion King begins with a fundamental misconception about lion pride structure. In the film, Mufasa rules as king alongside his mate Sarabi, with their son Simba as heir to the throne. This patrilineal monarchy bears little resemblance to actual lion social dynamics. In reality, lion prides are matrilineal, explains Dr. Vance. They consist of related females who remain in their birth territory, while males disperse and form coalitions to temporarily take over prides. A typical pride might have 2 to 3 adult males who have ousted the previous coalition, and they generally rule for just 2 to 4 years before being displaced themselves. This means Simba's eventual return to challenge Scar would not have restored any natural order. It would have been one male lion replacing another, something that happens regularly in lion society without moral dimensions. More troublingly, when a new male coalition takes over a pride, they typically kill all cubs fathered by previous males, a behavior called infanticide that allows females to become receptive to mating sooner. This means that had Simba been a real lion cub, Scar would likely have killed him immediately upon taking power rather than allowing him to flee. The famous scene where Rafiki presents newborn Simba to the assembled animals is perhaps the most biologically implausible moment. Dr. Nathan Wolfe, ecologist at the University of Colorado, explains, "Predator and prey species do not gather peacefully, regardless of the occasion. The zebras, antelopes, and other herbivores would flee at the first scent of lions. Their survival depends on avoiding, not honoring, predators." The portrayal of the hyenas as Scar's minions misrepresents another complex ecological relationship. Hyenas and lions are competitors rather than hierarchical allies or enemies. Both species occasionally steal each other's kills and even kill each other when opportunities arise. Hyenas are not the skulking, simple-minded scavengers portrayed in the film, notes Dr. Wolfe. They are sophisticated social predators with complex clan structures. They actually kill about 70% of what they eat, rather than primarily scavenging as the film suggests. Timon and Pumbaa's Hakuna Matata philosophy of carefree living contradicts the intense survival pressures faced by real meerkats and warthogs. Meerkats live in highly vigilant colonies with strict social hierarchies and constant predator awareness, the opposite of Timon's relaxed attitude. A solitary meerkat separated from its colony, as Timon appears to be, would likely not survive long. The famous grub diet shown in the film is another oversimplification, adds Dr. Wolfe. While lions are obligate carnivores requiring meat, Simba is shown thriving on insects during his adolescence. A real lion cub would become severely malnourished without meat protein, developing debilitating health issues rather than growing into a healthy adult. The 2013 film Frozen centers around Elsa's magical ability to create and manipulate ice and snow, powers that fundamentally violate the laws of thermodynamics. Dr. Rachel Winters, cryogenic physicist at CERN, explains, "Creating ice requires the removal of heat energy from water molecules. This energy cannot simply disappear, it must be transferred somewhere. When Elsa instantaneously freezes objects, she is essentially performing massive heat transfer with no apparent energy input or output." Calculations of the energy involved in Elsa's powers reveal the scale of this violation. In the scene where she freezes the entire kingdom of Arendelle, including the surrounding fjord, she would need to remove approximately 10 to the power of 15 joules of thermal energy, equivalent to the detonation of a small nuclear weapon. If this energy were released into the surrounding environment, as physics demands, it would create a devastating heat wave that would likely kill everyone in the vicinity, notes Dr. Winters. Alternatively, if Elsa were somehow absorbing this energy into her body, she would immediately vaporize. The construction of Elsa's ice palace presents additional physical impossibilities. Ice has specific structural properties and limitations. It cannot support the soaring, delicate architecture shown in the film without internal reinforcement or compression structures. The transparent, perfectly clear ice created by Elsa also contradicts the natural formation of ice crystals, which contain air bubbles and imperfections that cause the cloudy appearance of real ice. Then there is the matter of Olaf, the living snowman. Dr. Gregory Henderson, materials scientist at MIT, points out, "Snow is simply frozen water crystals. It contains no biological components necessary for life. It lacks cellular structure, metabolic processes, or any mechanism for consciousness." Olaf's ability to disassemble and reassemble himself contradicts both physics and biology. His persistence at warm temperatures, even before Elsa creates his personal flurry, violates basic thermodynamics. Snow melts at temperatures above 0 degrees Celsius, and the film clearly shows summer conditions that would immediately melt any snow construction. Anna's freezing heart presents medical impossibilities as well. Dr. Olivia Vernon, hypothermia specialist at the University of Alaska, explains, when the human body freezes, ice crystals form inside cells, rupturing cell membranes and causing irreversible damage. A gradually freezing heart would experience tissue death long before the dramatic moment of complete freezing shown in the film. The idea that an act of true love could reverse this process contradicts everything known about cryobiology and tissue damage. Once cells are damaged by ice crystal formation, emotional states cannot trigger cellular repair at the speed and completeness shown in the film. Even in controlled medical cryopreservation, we cannot currently freeze and revive complex organs like the heart without significant damage, adds Dr. Vernon. The instantaneous revival and healing shown would require cellular regeneration technology far beyond current science. The 2015 film, Inside Out, personifies emotions as characters controlling a console in the mind of an 11-year-old girl. While the film has been praised for its psychological nuance, its portrayal of the brain and emotions simplifies complex neurological processes. Dr. Howard Fletcher explains, emotions are not discrete entities operating a control panel, but rather emergent experiences arising from intricate neurochemical processes across multiple brain regions. The amygdala, hypothalamus, prefrontal cortex, and other structures work in concert to create emotional experiences. The film's depiction of memories as physical spheres stored in a library-like system contradicts current understanding of memory formation and storage. Dr. Fletcher continues, human memories are not stored as individual units, but as patterns of neural connections distributed throughout the brain. The distinction between short-term and long-term memory is not about physical location, but about biochemical processes that strengthen synaptic connections. The concept of core memories, that power personality islands, has no direct neurological equivalent. Personality development involves complex interactions between genetic predispositions, environmental influences, and accumulated experiences, not a few foundational memories that physically power aspects of personality. Perhaps most simplified is the film's portrayal of memory loss, notes Dr. Fletcher. Memories in the film fall into an abyss and disappear completely. In reality, memory degradation is often partial and complex. Some aspects may be retained while others fade, and even forgotten memories may leave traces that influence behavior without conscious recall. The film's portrayal of abstract thought as a physical realm where characters become increasingly abstract representations is a creative visualization but bears little resemblance to actual abstract reasoning processes in the brain. Abstract thinking involves activation of the prefrontal cortex and formation of conceptual neural networks, explains Dr. Fletcher. It is not a physical transformation but a different mode of information processing. The dream production sequence, portrayed as a film studio, creatively simplifies the complex and still not fully understood process of dreaming. Current neuroscience suggests dreams involve memory consolidation, emotional processing, and random neural firing interpreted by the brain's pattern recognition systems, not a coordinated production by conscious entities. Disney's Zootopia presents a world where mammals have evolved human-level intelligence, complex societies, and bipedal locomotion while maintaining species-specific characteristics. This premise immediately creates evolutionary contradictions. Dr. Margaret Chen, evolutionary biologist at Harvard University, explains, the film shows predator and prey species living harmoniously in a shared society. This ignores the fundamental evolutionary pressures that shaped these species. Predator adaptations, sharp teeth, keen senses, stealth, evolved specifically to hunt prey. Prey adaptations, speed, vigilance, defensive structures, evolved to escape predators. The film's premise that predators once hunted prey but evolved beyond this behavior contradicts the biological concept of obligate carnivores. Animals like foxes and tigers cannot survive on plant material alone due to their digestive systems and nutritional requirements. The nutritional needs shown in the film are inconsistent, notes Dr. Chun. Officer Hops, a rabbit, is shown eating plant-based foods appropriate for herbivores. Nick Wilde, a fox, eats blueberries and popsicles instead of the meat his species requires. A real fox subsisting on such a diet would develop severe malnutrition. The size disparities in Zootopia present another biological problem. The film shows mice and elephants using the same infrastructure with minor accommodations. In reality, the square cube law dictates that as animals increase in size, their volume increases faster than their surface area, creating fundamentally different physiological needs. A mouse's heart beats 500 to 700 times per minute, while an elephant's beats 30 times per minute, explains Dr. Chan. Their metabolic rates, temperature regulation, and oxygen requirements are vastly different. A shared environment suitable for both would be biologically impossible. The film's most famous scene involves sloths working at the DMV, a joke about their slowness. While sloths are indeed slow-moving, the film exaggerates this trait beyond biological reality. Sloths move slowly as an energy conservation adaptation, Dr. Chun points out, but they are not mentally slow. The film conflates physical movement speed with cognitive processing speed, which has no biological basis. A sloth's brain does not process information any slower than similarly sized mammals. Perhaps most fundamentally, the film's premise of all mammals evolving human-like intelligence simultaneously across diverse evolutionary lineages contradicts evolutionary principles. Intelligence of the type shown would have provided such significant adaptive advantages that species acquiring it first would likely have dominated or eliminated competition. In evolutionary history, when one species gains a significant advantage, it typically leads to either the extinction of competitors or their adaptation to different niches, explains Dr. Chun. The simultaneous development of similar intelligence levels across diverse mammalian species would be an extraordinary evolutionary coincidence lacking any plausible mechanism. Tangled features one of Disney's most famous magical elements, Rapunzel's 70-foot golden hair that not only grows to impossible lengths but also possesses healing properties and supernatural strength. Dr. Gregory Henderson explains, human hair is made of keratin, a protein that cannot conduct magical energy or heal wounds. More immediately problematic is the weight and strength of such long hair. 70 feet of human hair would weigh approximately 10 to 15 pounds, creating unsustainable neck strain and making the hair climbing scenes physically impossible. The tensile strength of human hair is approximately 380 megapascals, far below what would be required for it to function as a climbing rope. Hair would stretch and break long before supporting the weight of an adult human. When Flynn climbs Rapunzel's tower using her hair, he would be applying forces that would either rip the hair from her scalp or cause severe neck injury, notes Dr. Henderson. The human neck cannot support sudden loads of the magnitude shown without vertebral damage. The scene where Rapunzel's hair glows while healing wounds introduces additional biological impossibilities. Bioluminescence in nature requires specific chemical reactions, typically involving the molecule luciferin and the enzyme luciferase, neither of which are present in human hair. The healing properties attributed to Rapunzel's hair would require some mechanism for cellular regeneration, explains Dr. Maria Contis, regenerative medicine researcher at Johns Hopkins. Hair strands are composed of dead cells without any regenerative capacity. Even if we imagine some form of stem cell activation, the mechanism for transmitting this effect from hair to wound site has no biological parallel. The film's premise that Rapunzel's hair loses its power when cut is particularly puzzling from a biological perspective. If the magical properties were cellular in nature, cut hair would retain these properties until the cells degraded, just as cut fingernails retain their structural properties. The immediate color change when the hair is cut suggests a system-wide, instantaneous signal that terminates some ongoing process, notes Dr. Contis. Nothing in biology works this way. Even the most rapid cellular signaling cascades take milliseconds to seconds to complete. Moana incorporates Polynesian navigation traditions, including wayfinding by the stars. While this practice has historical accuracy, the film takes artistic liberties with celestial mechanics. Dr. Samantha Rodriguez, astrophysicist at Caltech, explains, the constellation that guides Moana appears and disappears according to narrative needs rather than astronomical reality. Constellations move predictably across the night sky as Earth rotates, and their seasonal visibility follows fixed patterns based on Earth's orbit around the Sun. More problematic is the film's portrayal of Te-Fiti as a goddess who can create islands and life. The geological processes that form Pacific Islands involve tectonic plate movement, volcanic activity, and coral reef formation, processes that occur over thousands to millions of years. The rapid island formation shown when Te-Fiti's heart is restored would require energy equivalent to multiple volcanic eruptions, directed with precision impossible in natural systems, notes Dr. Rodriguez. The instantaneous appearance of vegetation contradicts everything we know about ecological succession and plant growth rates. The character Te-Ka, a lava monster, presents additional physical impossibilities. Lava temperatures range from 700 degrees Celsius to 1,200 degrees Celsius, hot enough to instantly ignite any organic material in proximity. Moana's approach to Te-Ka would have resulted in severe burns from radiant heat alone, long before direct contact. A being composed of molten rock would be unable to maintain structural integrity in seawater, explains geologist Dr. James Wilson from the University of Hawaii. The extreme temperature differential would cause rapid cooling and solidification of the outer layers, while the internal heat would create steam explosions as seawater penetrated cracks in the cooled exterior. The heart of Te-Fiti, portrayed as a small glowing stone with the power to create life, contradicts fundamental principles of biology and energy conservation. Life arises from complex chemical processes and genetic information transfer, not from concentrated energy sources or magical artifacts. If we interpret the heart as some form of energy source, adds Dr. Rodriguez, the film still violates conservation of energy. The power to create islands and ecosystems represents energy on a scale comparable to geological and evolutionary processes. Energy that cannot be contained in a small stone without exotic physics beyond current scientific understanding. As we analyze these beloved stories through scientific lenses, a fundamental question emerges. Does the lack of scientific accuracy actually matter? Are we missing the point by subjecting fantasies to scientific scrutiny? Dr. Hannah Prescott suggests a nuanced perspective. Disney films were never intended as scientific documentation. They are modern myths that use fantasy to explore human emotions and social values. Applying scientific standards to them might seem like missing their purpose. However, research suggests these scientific inaccuracies have real-world consequences. A 2021 study published in the Journal of Environmental Education found that children exposed to anthropomorphized animals in media were more likely to misunderstand animal behavior and needs, potentially affecting conservation efforts later in life. The issue is not that children believe mice can talk, explains educational psychologist Dr. Martin Green. It is that subtle misconceptions about animal capabilities, needs, and behaviors become embedded in developing minds, creating implicit frameworks that can persist into adulthood. A 2019 study at the University of Washington found that children who watched films with highly anthropomorphized animals were more likely to attribute human emotions, motivations, and cognitive abilities to animals in real-life contexts. While this sometimes increased empathy, it also led to fundamental misunderstandings about animal needs in captivity and the wild. Beyond zoology, physics misconceptions from media can affect scientific literacy. Dr. Winters notes, when children repeatedly see magical transformations that violate conservation of energy or mass, it can make it harder to later grasp why perpetual motion machines cannot work or why certain chemical reactions must be balanced. This perspective transforms our understanding of Disney's scientific inaccuracies from mere nitpicking to a meaningful consideration of how cultural narratives shape scientific understanding. However, there is another dimension to consider. Disney films, through their very departures from scientific accuracy, may serve as entry points for scientific curiosity. Dr. Ellen Burke, science education researcher at Columbia University, explains, when children love talking animal characters and later learn that real animals communicate differently, this gap can spark curiosity. Why can't animals talk like in movies? Becomes an entry point to learning about vocal anatomy, brain structure, and evolutionary divergence. This phenomenon has been documented in educational settings. A 2020 study in the International Journal of Science Education found that using popular media inaccuracies as teaching moments significantly increased student engagement and information retention compared to traditional instruction alone. We might consider Disney's scientific departures as opportunities rather than liabilities, suggests Dr. Burke. The gap between fantasy and reality creates cognitive dissonance that, when properly addressed, deepens understanding rather than hindering it. This perspective reframes the scientific analysis of Disney films from critique to opportunity, a chance to use beloved cultural touchstones as springboards for scientific discovery. The emotional connection children form with these stories can be leveraged to create engagement with scientific concepts that might otherwise seem abstract or inaccessible. Dr. Howard Fletcher explains, the brain's emotional and memory systems are deeply interconnected. Information linked to emotional experiences is encoded more strongly. When we connect scientific facts to stories children already care about, we tap into this neurological relationship. This understanding has led to innovative educational approaches. Science educators at the California Academy of Sciences developed a program called Science in the Stories, which uses popular films as starting points for exploring accurate science. Children who participated showed significantly increased science engagement and content retention compared to control groups. We found that children were not disappointed to learn the scientific reality, notes program director Dr. Janet Rivera. Rather, they were fascinated by the contrast. The emotional investment in the stories transferred to curiosity about the real-world systems. This educational approach mirrors the developmental process itself. Child development specialists note that magical thinking is a normal phase that gradually gives way to more reality-based understanding. Children naturally move from magical thinking to more logical, causally based understanding as they develop, explains developmental psychologist Dr. Sarah Chun. Media that contains both magical and realistic elements can serve as bridges during this transition, especially when adults help contextualize the fantasy elements. This suggests the optimal approach is not to either reject Disney films for their inaccuracies or accept them uncritically, but rather to use them as starting points for deeper exploration. The contrast between fantasy and reality becomes a powerful educational tool when properly framed. This new understanding of the relationship between fantasy media and scientific literacy has far-reaching implications for education, parenting, and media creation itself. For educators, it suggests that dismissing popular fantasy as just entertainment misses an opportunity for engagement. Instead, these cultural touchstones can be deliberately incorporated into science education as points of comparison and contrast. When teaching marine biology, starting with "How is Ariel different from real mermaids?" immediately captures attention, notes high school science teacher Michael Rodriguez. The answer, that mermaids do not exist but are composite imaginations of human and fish anatomy, becomes a perfect introduction to discussing the actual adaptations of marine mammals versus fish. This approach has shown particular promise with students who initially express low interest in science. By connecting scientific concepts to familiar stories, educators can make abstract principles more concrete and emotionally resonant. For parents, this perspective suggests the value of co-viewing and discussion rather than restriction. Research indicates that parental mediation, discussing media content with children, significantly affects how children process and interpret fantasy elements. When parents watch films with children and occasionally note, "Real lions cannot talk, but they do communicate through roars and body language," they help children develop media literacy alongside scientific understanding, explains Dr. Olivia Vernon. This approach preserves the emotional enjoyment of the story while planting seeds for critical thinking. For media creators, this understanding presents both challenges and opportunities. Some modern productions have begun incorporating more scientific accuracy while maintaining storytelling appeal. The rise of scientific consultants in children's media production reflects this trend. We're seeing a new generation of children's content that maintains wonder and imagination while being more grounded in scientific reality, notes media analyst Dr. Robert Chun. Shows like Octonauts and Wild Kratts blend adventure with surprisingly accurate animal behavior and biology. This trend suggests that scientific accuracy and compelling storytelling need not be mutually exclusive. By working with scientific consultants earlier in the creative process, storytellers can discover that reality often provides narrative possibilities as interesting as pure fantasy. Beyond specific educational applications, this perspective invites us to reconsider the relationship between science and imagination more broadly. Rather than opposing forces, they may be complementary modes of understanding the world. Science itself requires imagination, notes physicist Dr. Maria Garcia. The great scientific breakthroughs often came from researchers who could imagine new possibilities beyond current understanding. Einstein's thought experiments about riding light beams were exercises in directed imagination that led to revolutionary physics. This suggests that fantasy stories, even scientifically inaccurate ones, may cultivate imaginative capacities that science itself requires. The ability to envision alternatives to current reality is essential to both scientific innovation and storytelling. The issue is not imagination versus accuracy, explains Dr. Garcia, but rather developing the ability to move fluidly between imaginative and analytical modes of thinking, knowing when each is appropriate. This integrated perspective transforms our understanding of the relationship between Disney fantasies and scientific accuracy. Rather than simply cataloging inaccuracies or defending fantasy from scientific scrutiny, we can appreciate how the tension between them creates opportunities for deeper engagement with both science and storytelling. For children developing their understanding of the world, this tension offers a graduate pathway from magical thinking to more evidence-based understanding. Far from being detrimental, the contrast between fantasy and reality may serve as a developmental scaffold when properly contextualized. Children are not passive consumers who uncritically absorb media messages, notes educational psychologist Dr. Jennifer Morrison. They actively construct understanding based on multiple inputs: media, direct experience, conversations with adults, formal education. The presence of scientific inaccuracies in some inputs does not determine their ultimate understanding. Research supports this nuanced view. A longitudinal study tracking children's scientific understanding found that exposure to fantasy media did not predict lower scientific literacy in adolescence. What did predict outcomes was the quality of science education and the presence of adults who could contextualize media content. This suggests that the scientific accuracy of Disney films matters less than how these films are situated within broader educational ecosystems. When fantasy is acknowledged as fantasy and complemented by accurate information from other sources, children develop both imaginative capabilities and scientific understanding. As our exploration comes full circle, we arrive at a profound realization. Disney's scientific departures are not flaws to be corrected but differences to be bridged, gaps that create spaces for curiosity and growth. The tension between magical storytelling and scientific accuracy reflects a deeper pattern in human development and learning. Dr. Hannah Prescott offers this synthesis. Children do not simply progress from wrong to right understanding. They navigate increasingly sophisticated models of reality, each valuable in its context. A child who understands both how lions behave in stories and how they behave in nature possesses a richer cognitive landscape than one with only factual knowledge. This perspective invites us to move beyond the false dichotomy of imagination versus accuracy. The most scientifically literate societies might not be those that rigidly adhere to factual representations in all contexts, but rather those that cultivate the ability to navigate between multiple modes of understanding, appreciating stories as stories while developing increasingly accurate models of physical reality. Perhaps the greatest magic in Disney films is not their departure from scientific accuracy, but their capacity to inspire wonder that, when properly channeled, leads to deeper engagement with the actual marvels of our universe. A universe where real lions cannot sing but communicate through infrasound that travels for miles, where actual marine ecosystems achieve complexity beyond any animator's imagination, and where the transformation of a caterpillar into a butterfly reveals natural magic, more astonishing than any fairy godmother's spell. In the end, the most compelling story may not be found in either scientific journals or animated features alone, but in the developing minds of children who learn to appreciate both, who can be transported by fantasy while being grounded in reality, who understand the difference while valuing both, and who might someday make discoveries that transform what we currently consider impossible into tomorrow's science fact. For in the space between what we can imagine and what we can prove lies the frontier of human discovery. a realm where Disney animators and research scientists might recognize in each other a shared capacity for wonder that drives both storytelling and scientific inquiry forward.